Well, I'm continuing my conversations with the 2025 Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce award winners, and I am now with the Citizen of the Year,
Thank you.
Tamra Ingwaldson. How are you?
I am good. Thank you very, very much.
I've known you for a long time now at the radio station. You would come in and come on the air with us. I think at that time it was United Way.
United Way of Mason County, and Dale used to call me One Take Tam.
Yeah, in and out. That's where I learned it too. You know, you guys are the professionals and you're good at what you do. So it's just a great conversation to have. Currently now you're working with Shelton Veterans Village in a capacity of support programs, services.
So for the whole organization as a whole, so the New Horizon communities.
All of it.
So I help support all 3 of the villages.
Citizen of the Year is a great honor bestowed on by the folks in the community who voted on this. You had great additional finalists that you were up against as well. And
they're amazing people.
I think it just goes to show the level of, and it goes back to your United Way days, the level of service that you give to the community, the amount of self that you have given over the years to the community. So let's talk a little bit about where you learned that. Where did you get instilled, I guess, the value of community focus, perhaps, or something like that?
I've been community focused, for as long as I can remember. I know growing up, my parents coached sports. Mm-hmm. Some of the sports I wasn't allowed to play at the time, but now I could play football and wrestle if I wanted to.
You could.
But all of the different sports, so watching them grow up and coach, and then I would help in different capacities as well. And then the different things in high school, so your pep clubs and ASB along with the sports. So it's just always just been a way of being. I never really sat out and went, oh, I need to do this so I can get that. It's like, no, it's just how do you be in community together, and how do you work to do the right thing and make the right choices? And there'll be hiccups, but as long as you're focused on trying to do the right thing, you get to where you need to be.
How do you, I guess, get up every morning and, and it's hard. It's probably not every morning, but obviously the majority of mornings you'll wake up and you'll be ready to move forward, to like push through, try to fix that struggle, not give up, things like that.
The bulk of that is because as a single parent, it's been just me and my girls since they were 2 and 3. So divorced in 95, and just everything was focused around how do I model being a good citizen for my children. And now that they're adults, they are living lives of service and working in service-related fields as well. And so that makes me really, really proud.
I bet.
Really, really proud. And so it's all about how am I trying to model being a good citizen so that they grow up knowing that they can be and do whatever they want to do as long as it's with the helper mindset. And so I just wake up, and some days, it's like, oh yeah, that bone's a little creaky. And sometimes, you don't just spring right out of bed these days, but it's all, how do I look at what can I do to do my part? It's all of our little parts, and I'm not any exceptional person. It's just, I just try and do my part and be mindful of how all of us together are what makes the community fabric strong.
I've noticed over the years, and you kind of alluded to this, that there's a lot of, let's say, factions, just for lack of a better term, in Shelton, right? Everybody kind of has their own little camp, and it's becoming even more and more siloed.
Yeah.
But if you get into those silos and you talk with those groups, you understand that at the end of the day, they all want the best for Shelton and Mason County. Mm-hmm. They all have oftentimes very different ways of looking at how to get there.
Yep.
But they all want the best for the county. What have you been able to do over the years to jump from group to group, perhaps, and make those connections that say, listen, I understand you have a thought about this, but did you know this group over here is doing something so similar that, maybe for some of these larger national political thoughts, you put that aside and you two as groups would make a real powerful force moving forward on something.
And a lot of that comes from the 20 plus years of nonprofit work that I've done. So it started out 20 years in telecom, and then layoff number one happened, and then some other things in Home Builders Association, layoff number two, and then landed with the United Ways. So United Way of Kitsap County and United Way of Mason County, prior to coming to New Horizon Communities. And so always working in a way of, the model was live united.
Right.
So how are we making choices that help us to be able to lift each other up? A lot of times people say, well, they just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Well, they got to have a pair of boots first, and do those boots, are they fancy enough to have the straps? And so it's all about, how are we looking at the way that we're living united? And so, like you said, different organizations and different people who may be kind of siloing, and so there's not that diversity of thought coming in. And when you do have that opportunity to make those connections, you're like, oh, this one, they're all kind of focused on the same thing. It's just maybe not recognizing that they are, for one, and so focused on the path that they think is the right path to get there, you lose sight of the common ground everyone has. And so that's why I try and find ways to be engaged that can be part of that. I can help be part of that conversation. And so a newer thing that I'm now part of is called Peacekeepers, where it's a group of an equal number of women from who are democratically aligned or Republican aligned, and we get together and we talk about family and faith, and we break bread together, and we look at what kind of service projects can we do together, because yeah, we may have some different nuances or variations on things politically, but the common ground and the common goals are still there. And so how can we start modeling that behavior of fostering that sense of community, and that compromise isn't a dirty word, and that it's okay to agree to disagree. It's the way that we disagree that matters, because then you can still hear each other and be able to move forward and have shared solutions that make the community stronger and healthier.
What would you say, and I may be wrong on this, so tell me if I am, of course, but what would you say about when looking at families or individuals, anyone really from, let's just say, 25 to 55, who really are right now struggling to even just make ends meet and have their homes not, their home life not be troubled. So they don't have hardly any time to even think about the time it would take perhaps to think outside themselves, in a sense of contributing into a broader community.
That's a really good question, and that's something that can really make the difference. So when early on as a single parent, there were some organizations that wanted me to join their organization and be a part of it. Kiwanis Club in South Kitsap, as an example. And I'm like, at that time, I was still commuting to the phone company over in Seattle as a single parent. So I was commuting from Port Orchard, the two little girls. I'm like, well, single parent, two little kids, how do I make this all fit? And so I'm happy to come learn about the organization and see what it's about. But you need to know my children will come with me.
Right.
So if organizations are lacking for volunteers and people to be engaged, how do you welcome the family? Because then when the family is volunteering together in that sense of community, you're providing these really robust educational opportunities for your children. They're now getting to be able to engage with others. They can see, it helps them with their critical thinking. It helps them to have a more global perspective. It helps them to develop their personalities and recognize, what are the things I want to do when I become a grown-up. Some meetings were where the girls I'd bring them with their Happy Meals and their coloring books, and they'd be in the back room, and sometimes the older adults that were supposed to be paying attention to the meeting, they're like, oh no, I'm going to go do homework and color with these little ones back here. So they ended up with lots of extra grandparents because of just kind of that engagement. And it also helped them to recognize different behaviors as they were growing up, because there were some meetings where the adults were a little contentious.
Yeah.
And on the road home, we would talk about what we witnessed and what they thought about it. And they would be like, Mommy, some of those grown-ups were really mad. And they just kept yelling and saying that you and the other people on the board weren't listening to them. But then when it was your turn to talk or one of your board members' turns to talk, they weren't listening to you. They were talking and being some kind of not nice conversations.
Uh-huh.
So they, they get to experience all the different behaviors we as adults, may be modeling, and sometimes we may not realize that we may not be modeling what we want our children to grow up and be, so being examples, and it just really helps, I think, providing those opportunities so that the family unit as a whole, and with the sports, and I know you're at that stage now yourself. Yeah. And so all of those sporting events and all of the different things, helping if you have high school kids, helping with the grad night so that kids have a safe way to celebrate. But those are all different ways of building community, building connections, modeling the behavior that we want our children to grow up and live by those models and those rules as well.
Okay, so now the person has the time, but they don't feel like, for whatever reason, they have anything that they can contribute, whether or not they don't think that they would have anything particularly insightful to add to a conversation, or they don't feel like they would be able to offer their skill set in a productive manner. What would you say to those folks?
Everyone has something they can contribute, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. Everyone has a gift. And if you aren't aware of what your gift is yet, well, then let's find out together. You can work through that. I know, going back a little bit, one of the ways when I was still commuting and not able to go to PTA meetings just because ferry boat, driving around the freeway and all of that, and wanted to figure out how I could be involved in the PTA, but I couldn't be there physically. So going back to families' lack of time, checked in with PTA, they needed someone to cut and trim and batch and bundle the soup labels and the box tops because they have to be turned in a certain way. Uh-huh. So the girls would bring those home, and we would do that as a project at home. We would trim them, and so that was one way we found that we could, as a family, be part of that community service in partnership with their school. So going back to someone's time, talent, and treasures, everybody has a gift. And if you're not sure what it is, find someone, walk into a service club. Service clubs are an amazing, welcoming place. So are our faith communities. Yeah. Find what is it that your heart says, my heart is leading me this direction. But service clubs are a great way to kind of, you can just join, you can just kind of be part of the fabric. And then as you're building your comfort level, being around the members of the service club, you'll find different niches that work for you. It could be that, all of a sudden, oh, this other person is a knitter as well. Well, I've been struggling with how to do this knit one, purl two kind of combination thing. But so I can now make that friendship bond over this knitting question. And then because we're in a service club together, oh, well, let's knit some things for the babies, beanies for the babies, or blankets, or all of these other opportunities that can then just expand and blossom from that.
We are, as taping this, just about 6 years to the day from the start of COVID and the pandemic. Oof. And that, can you believe that? Yeah. That changed a lot of the ways as well people interact and build community. It has switched a lot to online meetings and online gatherings, and that was all well and good for the first couple of years. It seems like maybe we're moving back to a more in-person kind of a situation, especially when the service clubs and things like that. Do you think that innately we as humans need to have that in person, and is that going to rebound even further past these anniversaries of COVID every year? into even more potential service, or are you concerned at all that, especially with like the digital age that we're in, that more folks may not feel like they're even part of the community and would rather go inward into their phones versus take that leap of faith to be kind of expose yourself to groups of people, or just kind of be with larger groups of people?
I think because innately as human beings, as creatures, we need the village. None of us can survive or be successful at anything without someone else. And so it really is all about us being in a village, in community together. So the more that we each take that step, and sometimes it can be scary. There's been a lot of times where I've stepped into a space, I'm like, So going back to when my girls were growing up, my now ex, but at the time he wanted me to find a church that was like what he grew up going to. Well, he is a Black man from Louisiana. I was a white girl from Devils Lake, North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know much about those kinds of churches, or any church actually, growing up. And so I found a place, and he couldn't go. But I walked in there with my oldest daughter because Sadie hadn't been born yet. And so Clarissa and I walk in there. She's in her crib, and I walk in there, and I'm like, I was the only person that looked like me in the place, but there I was. And that was scary because I didn't know anybody, but it was such a welcoming experience. Everyone there in the congregation just wrapped around me. All of a sudden I have all these aunties, and Clarissa is like, okay, I guess she's got a new auntie now. And ended up being in the choir while we still lived in that community for a while. But it was a big step. It was way outside anything I'd ever known. But if we don't take those steps, our spirit doesn't have a chance to grow. And the gifts that we all bring to the table are not then available for someone who may need that gift. Maybe you are the right type of listener for someone who needs to be able to talk, but they don't know of someone to talk with about something they're struggling with. But you may have just that right personality match and that right ability in the way that you listen, that you become that safe space for that person. And if you don't venture out, you're never in a place where you can be that helper for that person.
Well, congratulations on your award. It was great to see you up there.
It was
getting that one.
It's still, it's like, I just try and be me and do the little things, but I'm still in shock and awe.
Well, the way the crowd reacted, you have touched a lot of lives over these many years you've been in our community. The 2025 Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year, Tamra Ingwaldson. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.